Hey, Dr. Min. So this is my bedroom. I have a very limited amount of space in my house, so this is where I'm at. I'm going to briefly kind of discuss the way that I did this and how I interpreted it, and hopefully that it's useful, but I didn't want to confuse you. So I divided my presentation into two parts. The first part, it's kind of like a mock workshop. So I'm doing it as though I were doing like a real workshop, and I'll explain things as they come, like where the activity is and stuff when I get there. Then part two is going to be kind of the questions that you ask in the instructions, like about the activity and how I got there and how I got the information and stuff. So anyway, all that to say, if you have any questions, feel free to email me and I'll be able to answer those questions. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this is part one. You mentioned a worksheet in the instructions, so I did put together a worksheet and I will be attaching that for you to view, but I do have a picture on my husband's phone here. It's essentially just going to be just a conflict management workshop, put a little clip art. I described the workshop and listed some questions. You can view that. I won't read it to save time. But basically the questions, I had the idea of maybe asking each person. My goal would be everyone has a partner in this workshop. So your partner, whatever, whether it be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, whatever. So I would have them discuss these questions beforehand, maybe write them down with the intention of asking them again at the end after I've informed them of the information. The questions are based on the information that the workshop holds. So we would do that. I would then introduce the workshop, thank everyone for being here, and then I would go into it. Everyone views conflict differently. This can determine the way one behaves during conflict. In other words, their worldview, which can be defined as the way one views the world cognitively, ethically, and perceptually. Interpersonal Conflict by Hawker and Wilmot states that one's worldview is made up of the following components. 1, a view of what is real and important in the universe. 2, a view of how people and objects are supposed to relate to each other. 3, a view of what part of the universe is more valuable than others. 4, a view about how you know what you know. And 5, a view about how people should act. Another way of viewing conflict is Lilland's model of conflict. It demonstrates the way you view yourself and others in conflict, and it plays a vital part in how one handles conflict, meaning like how you view yourself and others could definitely result in how you react. Some common aspects that fall into this topic are gender and culture. According to the same textbook, Interpersonal Conflict, in Western culture, girls and women are seen as valuing connection with others, while boys and men are seen as valuing autonomy and independence. Culture also heavily affects conflict. There are two types, generally speaking, individualistic and collectivistic cultures. How you communicate with others definitely depends on culture. So knowing one's culture and being familiar with, where they come from could definitely help in how you manage your conflict with that said individual. According to the textbook, again, those of us in largely Western individualistic cultures must come to an understanding about the values and expectations of those in collectivistic cultures. Another common attribute of conflict is conflict styles. The different types are avoidance, which is denial of conflict; dominating, which is pursuing one's own concerns at the expense of another; compromise, some gain, some loss; obliging, which is the same as accommodation; and integrating, which is the same as collaborating. The textbook actually has a worksheet in it, and this is where I would introduce that. In a real world, I would print this off and have them complete it and discuss it. It's on page 147 of the textbook, and it's called Assessing Your Conflict Style. I would have them, it's also on 148, there's two parts of it here. But I would print it off and have them discuss it, and then, discuss whether it's accurate to them or not. And so we would do that little tiny activity first. I would then go into a few problems that lie within conflict are things such as bullying, abuse, and violence. And then the textbook also says that these are more than styles of conflict. They are choices that damage others. So then an article from sagu.edu by LaShawnda Beckwith in 2016 states that the leading causes of conflict are 1, lack of common understanding; 2, poor communication skills; 3, unclear or unfair expectations; and 4, power plays and manipulations. I think one of the most common ones in my relationship with my husband, and I think just in general, are poor communication skills. And I believe that the concept of listening falls into this category, as it is a huge part of being a good communicator, is being a good listener. Regardless of your culture or your gender. Because of this, the activity that I decided to do is called the Active Listening Conflict Management Activity. It's essentially an activity that focuses on questioning techniques and developing the skills of listening and asking questions. So then we would do this activity, which I have on my phone, the instructions, and what I would do is I'd get out the instructions. I would probably print them off maybe for them to look at, that way they can refer to it and not be confused. But I would just explain the instructions, which I will do now. 1, ask participants to form pairs and explain that one of them will start by asking one question, any question. 2, the other person will then either just answer the question or answer and follow up with another question, but which must build on the previous question, so they cannot change the topic. The follow-up question must be connected to the previous question. The challenge is to see how long they can continue the dialogue for using just one question as a foundation for the conversation. Give them up to 4 minutes. Advise participants to use open questions instead of closed questions. Closed questions are those that require just a yes or no answer. After the first round, you have a second round so that the other person now has the chance to start asking the first question. At the end of the 2 rounds, start a discussion, and it lists some questions that you can ask, such as, how challenging did you find this activity? What did you learn from it, etc. So we would do that, the entire thing, and I would probably probe those questions and have them discuss it among themselves, and maybe write them down. So there's that. And then that would probably conclude the workshop, and I would have them refer once again to the worksheet, which I'm attaching, and maybe answer the questions again and compare them and see if after the workshop, if they learned anything different about conflicts and, about themselves. So now this brings me to part 2 of the presentation, which is what you listed in your instructions about me just kind of discussing the activity and what it took for me to come up with all this. I think listening is a huge problem in most relationships, specifically mine. And I think it's a leading cause for conflict, as research suggests, and also my personal experience suggests. I wanted to choose an activity that was fun, but also focused on a heavily accurate and common topic that people will, relate to and be able to use for future conflict resolution tools. I, in preparing the material, read through several chapters of the book first to kind of gain some knowledge on some theories, and I wanted to kind of see where I wanted to go with that. Obviously, you can't teach a whole bachelor's degree of communication in one little workshop, so I wanted to just get the basics. So from there, I came up with some ideas. So then I researched some conflict management activities, which I'm listing in my resources, my references in a second. But that's where I got my activity idea, and it went along very well with what I'd already found in the textbook. So I just found a way to kind of make it all go together, and which brought me to the concept of listening for communication skills. From there, I also wanted some leading causes of conflict, so I looked that up. Anyway, so in the instructions, you ask us where ideally we would want to present this, and of course I would love to try this in class, because once again, it doesn't have to be just couples, it can be any kind of relationship with anyone. And so I realistically would like to do that in class, but since we don't have class, I thought maybe a workplace would be a good place to do it, to manage conflict in the workplace, and also maybe a couples class for anyone, like premarital counseling or marital counseling, just like anything, something like that, or just like a free tool. Hey, if you're married, if you're not married, if you're dating, come and be a part of this workshop that I'm doing. So that's it. This is my references. Again, my key terms and concepts and all that stuff were listed in the first half of the presentation in part 1, where I did the workshop. So hopefully that's everything. Hopefully I did everything correctly. As far as I know, I think I did. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me so I can clarify anything. Yeah, thank you so much.